That is really bad because look at the Titans. 5 ults, nearly 6 ults right now. This is the kind of advantage that can snowball for the rest of this map.
Yeah.
You look at that time and you might say, well, the Titans have to win every fight. The thing right now is they can. They can do it as long as they are very smart with their ult economy. And that is something the Titans are quite good at. This is the Titans. Will they lose for the first time ever in the Overwatch League?
For 5 weeks, the anticipation has been building, leading us up to a sequel to the Stage 1 Grand Final. The Shock and the Titans go at it again, and whereas normally the Titans pulled out superpowers, even when down maps with their backs against the wall, normally they put themselves in situations that they can snowball out of control. Not only did Titans have a stockpile full of ultimates that could have propelled them into the 7th map, we've seen them do this in other series, in the previous Grand Final, but the Shock was not having it. We're gonna break down that final fight that's going to go down to define the Stage 2 unbeaten run of the Shock, hopefully putting a pin in the GOATS meta, as well as some other cool nuances from the other maps in the series. First up, the epic fight to turn it all around. If you have a stockpile of ults riding the cart in the GOATS meta, that means you're very likely to win the upcoming fight. Keep your Zarya charged, meaning your likelihood to continue to keep winning multiple fights is extremely high. And normally, the defensive team in this situation would get run over and maybe not win a fight for 2 or 3 confrontations in the future when they finally build up their own ult bank. So, what was the turning points in allowing this to happen? Truth is, Blizzard World 2nd is one of the easiest points to stall in the entire game, and we're gonna see why. The brunt of the Shock without ultimates are playing in deep fear of their lives, knowing that a hard W press from the Titans is gonna take them out. So they aren't doing much more than just drawing aggro off of the cart. Meanwhile, above the cart, trading off stall duties is Choyobin on the D.Va, and then when he no longer can, is going to be Sinatra. Reason why I'm highlighting something boring as touching the cart is because if you don't have ults, and they do in the GOATS meta, you just have to wait the fight out as long as you can until you do, and that's the key. Then, on the other end of the fight, there was a few small miracles made in order to make the biggest offensive tools of the Titans to whiff. They shatter the brig and send a zoning D.Va bomb to the left-hand side, but they dodge both, with Violet using Transcendence and Super covering his Brigida player to threaten the counterpin. All the while, the stalling on the payload is getting taken turns, juggling whose responsibility it is to put their life on the line to touch the objective. But okay, Titans still had plenty more ults in the bank. You outplayed the first set. Now this is when they surely turn the fight around. Twilight now has the later Transcendence to help his tanks press W onto the Graviton Surge. Meanwhile, only Sinatra's on the cart, stalling it from above, farming up his own grav. But here we see the wackiest boop to cancel a Rhine pin that I've ever seen. What even caused this? Bumper goes from 100% securing the pin kill onto Moth, and is it Rascal's Flail? Is it Reinhardt's Hammer? Is it a combination of both? He gets doubly booped back, denying the one-hit kill, and now Titans dumped their ults with no frags to be seen, and then Sinatra comes up over the top with the clutch Graviton like he's done so many times in the series, punishing the lack of Transcendence, and Shock lands their offensive tools in a matter of seconds. Everything turns around. It was thought that you couldn't contain Bumper, that his feed-tastic playstyle always puts you in a lose-lose situation. I covered this in a previous video when they won the Stage 1 final, and oddly enough, as I'll show in this video, it kind of seemed like Bumper was playing more defensive, or at least Shock had shook him a bit in order to not be willing to go in, trade his life for damage, slowing down the game, putting it more in the hands of San Francisco Shock, at least at times. And with a few small gaps of hesitant play from the Titans, Shock's carefully held formations were often strong enough to do a bit of GOATS jujitsu to flip Titans' aggression on its head. So that was the final fight that sealed the fate of the Vancouver Titans. But the interesting thing about the themes of this series altogether was that just like in the first series, Super was able to get many more shatter stuns, but this time around, a lot more of those were converted into kills. Possibly the biggest clutch play of them all happened on the Blizzard World attack. You see, for 2 minutes straight, Vancouver was setting up the way they like to play. establish the high ground, and then launch Bumper as an offensive weapon, torpedoing into the enemy team with a Zarya bubble to cause trades to happen, to create chaos in the brawl formations. That's where they've always looked in control, and how they've always been able to clutch out so many games in a row in the Overwatch League, despite having an overly aggro main tank. This playstyle gave them the full hold on Paris A. It looked like it may have done so again on Blizzard World to send them to a 7th map if it were not for Super's fattiest of shatties punishing Bumper for pursuing onto the Graviton. If Bumper gets in with the pin to get the shield out of the way, the Diva Bomb from Janu on the backside surely would have picked up a few kills, but no, Super makes the play. Sinatra wasn't without his clutches too, which although in the 6th map the wear of the series going long was starting to show, a pair of Gravitons just utterly wasted in this series, making it seem like, oh no, it's about to happen again. The Shock are losing focus. It's time for the Titans to take advantage. On the other side of the coin, Sinatra's mid-fight damage output was so insane in this team fight that he starts a fight with the Grav, and just watch his ult percentage build up as this brawl continues, getting a second one inside the fight in a matter of 30 seconds. Actually, 22 seconds. I went back and counted it. He does this by hitting perfect tracking, but also landing near perfect direct hits on his ult fire, and it's that kind of play that then, as the Titans attack continues, that's going to have them run out of time by the time they hit that streets phase, even with an advantage. It sort of sneaks in a team fight that they weren't really supposed to win, which is exactly the type of clutch plays that the Titans were famous for up until this point, as evidenced by the clip on King's Row where Bumper's shatter was just bigger, where all the planning in the world for Super and Moth to bobble Bumper in the air to set up their own shatter doesn't matter if Bumper hits his zone on the backside with a sound barrier to keep his team alive. With that kind of reputation, you may have gone into this series assuming that the Shock were the ones that were going to get mentally boomed, but in fact, a lot of times it looked like Vancouver feared them, paying them respect that they never pay to anybody. Granted, Gibraltar is the Shock's map. We've seen them spawn trap everybody here, but look at the way the Vancouver Titans decidingly don't take a fight this entire time as the payload just keeps rolling. Normally they commit in to trade out damage, make the fight hectic like I said before, but here they play to sustain and are just retreating nonstop, never stopping the payload. Losing on point typically is smarter than playing to sustain forever on the defense unless you get big ults, but they don't do that either. Whereas, compared to the way San Francisco Shock plays their home map, huddled up into the car wash, they know they're holding the fort there. And instead of going down to meet them in the brawl, Titans attempts to give them a bit of a rope-a-dope. They go up in order to launch down, the type of fight, as I said, they like to set up, but Shock then just parries back, draws them into the other side of the cart. Who's even on offense in this clip? It's supposed to be the Titans, and now the Shock have them in a horrible situation where no matter what happens here, it's a net gain for the defense, because you're just wasting time. Win, lose, draw, whatever, you're not getting the cart pushed the same way that the Shock were able to, and now you're just in a situation where you got to use resources just to get out of spawn again. Not ideal. They do finish the map, go into overtime, but again, you see where committing down there to the low ground, even in a lost fight, having everybody respawn for the Shock, well, now they have some ults to work with on the retake, and they stalled the payload. Coming in on the retake, playing very split, so neither of the tank ults can get big value, and this pivot rope-a-dope style pans out again. Sustain, retreat back, Super hits the fat shatter on the flanking members of the Titans to the side. All the King's horses and all the King's men try to support ult to save them, but it just isn't enough. They hold here, and with 3 minutes on the clock, they're winning their home map, and it's just interesting to see that when Vancouver isn't playing the overly aggro style, their positioning all of a sudden is starting to get punished when they play a bit slower up against the well-coached San Francisco Shock, who's conformed to the Church of Krusty. Like, what was Bumper even thinking on this engage? Here on their attack, Shock has 2 goals: hold the cart, then win the car wash. They rush their entire team into there, and Bumper gets caught in what is the worst possible type of peek you can make. What space are you creating at this point? Yeah, you wanted to fight down there in the previous fights, but with your whole team trading out. Everyone else is deciding to go passive, so they can't contribute to this. This frame here is probably one of the best cases of damage angles that I ever could point out. Look how the San Francisco Shock all can focus the same target, Meanwhile, everyone from Vancouver sees basically nothing relevant at all. That's what makes this type of W press a feed. Now, it wouldn't be if the whole team was down there scrapping it up, and maybe they trade some kills out, thin out the offense, which is what the Shock tried to do on their defense, but the calling's just sort of all over the place, which frankly is good to see in some ways, isn't it? Because watching Vancouver go undefeated for this long made us all want to whip out the Aaron Paul memes. How does he keep getting away with this? Bumper's been feeding his brains out for months, and seemingly no one could tame the beast until the San Francisco Shock showed us how to have some of the most stable GOATS formations that we've ever seen, and making, by comparison, Vancouver look one note. They can go full aggro, sure, but Shock can do both. They can pull you into bad fights, flip fights on their head even when they're down men, and go aggro at times, which they rarely needed to do in this series because their controlled play was so much better. Well, guys, that's going to be it for my analysis of the grand finals of Stage 2. Hopefully the swan song to the GOATS Apocalypse meta. And let's just be fair, the best GOATS match we could ever ask for between the two best teams in the world at it. Now it's time to move on to Stage 3 with hopefully role restrictions to shake up the meta. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.